For USCFootball.com, I'm Jack Smith, joined by Chris Treviño for instant analysis from USC's Tuesday practice of its second bye week. It's election day today. There's a little bit of craziness going on with the band and helicopters. And Chris, big news out of USC football camp. Jayden Maiava has officially been named the starting quarterback by Lincoln Riley. Miller Moss, who had been the starter through the 9 games for USC, is now QB2, and there's a new head honcho in charge of the offense. We got to talk to Lincoln Riley today. We have some practice observations, but Chris, just overall, what are your initial thoughts on the QB change that many thought would come a little bit earlier in the season?
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of felt it was building. You felt the fan pressure get louder and the questions of Lincoln Riley about, are you going to make a change? Are we going to see Jayden Maiava at all, even just some snaps? So this was a tipping point. Obviously, Washington, you can point to a lot of games where maybe they should have put him in, or maybe they should have made the change. But the bye week in the middle of the season or late in the season is always the time when coaches like to make that change. You know, a lot of people were calling for it on the short week with Rutgers. No, that wasn't going to happen. You're not going to do it in a short week. You got 2 weeks with Jayden Maiava to prepare for Nebraska coming here for the homecoming game. So not surprised by the timing of it. It is a little late in the season, obviously 3 games, but you needed something. You need some sort of spark. You're 4-5, and Lincoln Riley, I guess, just looked at the tape, felt the pulse of the locker room, and just said it's time to go with number 14 at QB1.
Yeah, Moss threw 3 interceptions against Washington. Now, one was off of a receiver's hand, the other was on a Hail Mary, but he did make a costly decision in the third quarter, and ultimately he's done that late in a couple of games for USC in a season that started 4-5. But Riley wanted to make sure that we knew as reporters that this wasn't an indictment on Moss's play this season. He said he's been very good at leading the offense, but he felt like it was in the best interest of the team to go with Jayden Maiava. He said if you go back and you flip a couple things, Miller's season could be viewed as a great one, but at this point in the year with a couple games left, Lincoln Riley wanted to make the move, but he said it was like picking between 2 children that you like, but you have to pick one of them. Tough decision it seemed, but it wasn't an indictment of Moss's play.
You should probably do what me and Connor do for instant, and they should trade off games. It's like your 2 children for instant. You don't have to pick. We get to do it both. But yes, that is an analogy I feel like I've heard it made before. You know, you have to pick between these 2. Only one quarterback plays, although we would have made the argument that you can play Jayden a little bit, get him some reps, get him some opportunities, use those legs. He also said that they have similar skill sets. That was one of the things that I heard him say that kind of stood out to me, because I don't necessarily feel that is an apt description of their skill sets. I feel like Jayden, 6'4", can run, has more mobility, is obviously a little bit different of a quarterback than Miller Moss, stronger arm. But again, I'm not the QB whisperer. But yeah, it was an interesting comment to make, but it's a tough decision to make. And he's mentioned that he's had to make this decision before. Obviously, he had to go to Caleb Williams. That was more of a in-the-moment kind of thing. They're losing the Red River rivalry, and he leads them back to a comeback win, and he's the starter from there on. But I thought the interesting thing is that Lincoln Riley did say this is like a 1-week kind of thing. He's not permanently naming him the starter for the rest of the season. They're going week by week. But at this point, I feel like Jayden Maiava is going to start the final 3 games of the season. I think that was just something he was just, putting out there. He's not going to say, oh, he's the starter for the rest of the season, because he's saying you never know what's going to happen. One play away from changing, and Miller Moss, maybe he's back in as a starter at some point throughout the season. So you can never say anything is permanent, but he did say this is a 1-week kind of thing, and they're going to go from there.
One play away. I think the fans are not a big fan of that quote. Do you stand by it?
I do stand by it, because literally 1 play away. I see the anger. You're already typing out your comment. It's okay. Delete it. It's fine. But yes, 1 play away, 1 injury away. What happens, you don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah, and Lincoln Riley obviously doesn't want to, give a sense of entitlement to Jayden Maiava either. You want the backup quarterback to come in, and even though that they know it's their job, know that it could be taken away, or they still have to earn that role going forward. Lincoln Riley didn't really compare the skill sets, but it seemed like he was trying to quell the talk about how Maiava's a more physically gifted quarterback. He said their skill sets aren't that different, which I would agree. I feel like I disagree with Lincoln Riley's comments in that regard because of what Jayden Maiava can bring with his legs, and we're there after practice seeing both of the quarterbacks throw, and Miller Moss's key has been his accuracy, and it's something that was really good for him early on, but has struggled and faltered at times this season. The difference, though, is I think Jayden Maiava has a much stronger arm. It was coming out preseason in camp that just looked like the ball comes off of his hand a little bit different, and watching after practice, I'd say it's still the same. I do think there's a little bit of a different style in the way they throw the ball too, which, maybe Lincoln Riley just wants to calm down and talk about the fact that Maiava is more talented than Miller Moss, but I wouldn't say that their skill sets are the same.
And he was also asked, what does Jayden bring that's been missing from the offense? And that was something he totally shot down. It was like he doesn't want to talk about anything that was missing moving forward. And again, went on to compliment both of these guys. But yeah, Jayden Maiava has an arm, as some would say, a live arm. And we heard that, mainly in fall camp. You heard a lot more of that. It's like, hey, the ball comes out of his hand different than compared to Miller Moss. Obviously, as you mentioned, the accuracy. But Jayden Maiava, big 6'4" quarterback, strong arm, has zip on the ball. This is something that I think USC fans are going to be excited to see come 2 weeks from now when they play on November 16th against Nebraska. But we do want to mention, because Jayden Maiava is still a very young player, and this is still a player in his first year in the Lincoln Riley system. And Lincoln Riley did say he felt like he's done a good job getting the offense down, learning the playbook. But again, he is starting for the first time at USC with a new offense, with a new coordinator, with new coaching. So it's going to be a little bit of a transition. And Jayden Maiava had struggles at UNLV with turnovers. He was turnover prone. So just because you're going with the guy who, is Jayden Maiava, 6'4", has all these things, just remember he is still young, and he did have turnover issues last year. So I know Miller Moss has turnover issues here, so maybe you're just trading in for a different kind. But I think USC fans are just really excited about the upside that he brings with that arm, with that scrambling ability, being able to turn a broken play into maybe something special.
Yeah, I would assume that the turnovers are likely what Lincoln Riley's referencing when going back and watching the tape and reevaluating, because if both quarterbacks are going to turn the ball over, you probably would rather have Jayden Maiava as your starting quarterback because of that ability that he brings, one that was so good for Caleb Williams, and Maiava is definitely not Caleb Williams, at least yet, but he has more of that ability for when a play breaks down, for when other position groups aren't performing at their best, that he can elevate an offense through his 1/11th of it, probably a little bit more than Miller Moss can. Lincoln Riley was also asked about the future of the position in a couple of different ways, asking if the decision to go with Maiava was a move for the future or whether that was in mind, and then also asked about what's in the future for Miller Moss and what he recommends to Miller, what the discussion's been like with them. He kind of shot down both, and he said, this wasn't a decision that we made because of the future. We felt it was in the best interest for now. And he said he's talked with Miller Moss about how this has happened with, quarterbacks that played under him before, and it's worked out for guys in different ways. And he referenced Spencer Rattler, not by name, but going to a different school, getting drafted. He started an NFL game this year. And he also mentioned quarterbacks that sat, they waited for a little bit, and then they came back better. But it is a little bit of a limbo for Lincoln Riley because there's three things that are up in the air. You don't know if Jayden Maiava is coming back next year because he's had to wait throughout the entire season. If he never played, would he transfer again? Miller Moss has an extra year of eligibility. Does he use it? If he does, is it at USC? And then Julian Lewis, I don't think the Trojans are fully sure exactly what's going to happen with him. So there's a world where any three of those quarterbacks are at USC next year, or any three of them are not at USC next year. And it is probably a really tough thing for Lincoln Riley to feel like he has a handle on.
It feels like Lincoln Riley, with the quarterback situation, is trying to build a house of cards on a rocking boat on the middle of the high seas. That's what it feels like. It's a very precarious situation because you have so many different outcomes, and that's just what it is in the day and age of NIL, especially with the quarterback position. Oh, I'm not playing here? Okay, well, I have 5 schools that want me to play there, and they're going to give me money to play there, so it's a balancing act, even more so these days. So yeah, and Gerard Martinez, mentioned this, that it's just a tough between a rock and a hard place because you have to make a change. And if you do, what does that do with Miller Moss? Is he going to accept being the backup? Is he going to just sit out the rest of the season, not risk getting hurt and maybe transferring to another school? Does Julian Lewis look at the situation like, oh, you've got the young quarterback starting now. He's going to be the starter next year. I don't have a shot. Should I just go somewhere else? There's so many different questions that you have to kind of play off of. You have to see all the multiverses coming together. Which decision do you do? This is what Lincoln Riley felt was the best decision. I agree with the decision, even though, maybe it'll influence Julian Lewis. I feel like it definitely is going to influence Miller Moss, be it him going somewhere else. We'll see what happens at the end of the year or when we get to talk to him. And I do want to add, we did not talk to players today. We will be talking to them tomorrow. We only got Denton Lynn and Lincoln Riley today, so they changed it up there slightly for the bye week. But hopefully when we talk to Miller Moss again at some point, talk to Jayden Maiava, get some quotes from them. But it is a tough situation, and it's one I do not envy Lincoln Riley having to be in and make those choices.
Yeah, I feel like he used the analogy having two children and having to figure it out. Horrible analogy, but it's almost like the future of the quarterback room is like having a wife, a girlfriend, and a fling. And you don't want to lose any of them, but also you maybe can't have all three. And it just provides a lot of tough decisions, and I wouldn't want to be Lincoln Riley making those decisions right now. But for now, it is that Jayden Maiava will be the starting quarterback, at least moving forward until maybe Miller Moss earns it back or Maiava can stake his claim to it. You got to see players coming out of the tunnel today. We also mentioned anything from Danton Lynn. Obviously, the quarterback room drives the discussion today, but was there anything else that you noticed or observed from today that you'd like to mention?
I think the big thing is that Kamari Ramsey was out in full pads. He was in full pads last week, but he was in the yellow non-contact jersey, was not in a yellow non-contact jersey today, so that is a great sign for his availability moving forward. Jacoby Covington, who also did not play against Washington, was very close to returning, but they wanted to be extra cautious and give him the extra rest with the bye week. He was out in full pads, or excuse me, this was just a Shells practice, but he had his Shells helmet and cleats on, so looks like he is a full participant for the bye week. There were some other players that were missing, but again, it's the bye week, so they're giving extra rest to guys. No need to push anyone extra on the bye week, so we'll see more next week when we actually have a game week for Nebraska. But those were the two big observations, and overall the team seemed normal. There were some good vibes going around, guys laughing and joking. Miller Moss came out smiling, talking to Jake Jensen. Jayden Maiava came out, nothing special, came out with Matt Entz and Doug Belk, positioned him like bodyguards. So I don't know, maybe they were telling him to please take it easy on our position groups moving forward. But yeah, that was nothing out of the ordinary coming out of the tunnel, but there was just a different vibe because big change at QB1, Jack.
Yeah, and it's the first time that at USC Lincoln Riley has benched a quarterback or made any kind of real quarterback move. Of course, Caleb Williams opted out of the bowl last year, so that was different. But this is really the first time there has been a position change at quarterback, and it'll be interesting to see how it pays off for USC the rest of the way, with a bye week this week, then Nebraska and the two rivalry games on the horizon. Anything else that you wanted to bring up before we wrap it up today?
Not really. I mean, just saw Jayden taking some extra reps after practice, working with Luke Hurd. So, obviously they're investing in him because obviously he is QB1 now. So just nice to see after practice, and that's really the only thing we get to really see. So I thought that was interesting, just seeing him work on those extra reps. And Miller Moss stayed back as well, working with a group of tight ends as well. So guys still put in the extra work.
Well, it's the change that some USC fans have wanted for a long time. Some have come around on in the past couple weeks, and maybe a good rest of the fan base fully decided on this week. And maybe it was a little bit of pressure from the fans on Lincoln Riley to make the move. You can take credit if you want, if you were banging the drum for Miller Moss to be benched for the past couple of weeks. But USC has made a change at quarterback. Jayden Maiava will start, and hopefully we have a chance to talk to him tomorrow as we get to talk to players after practice. But that's all we've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. For Chris Treviño, I'm Jack Smith. This has been Instant Analysis. Make sure you're checking out USCfootball.com for more.